Hello, everyone.
This is Lannie and Louise. I'm Lannie for Tech Bay Area Advocates, which is part of the Global Tech Advocates ecosystem. 1,000+ tech leaders, entrepreneurs, and academics in 55 countries. We have over 2,000 advocates in San Francisco, Silicon Valley, East and North Bay, 6 years. We are true to our mission, along with the other 26 hubs in the globe, by working to champion, connect, and support advocates and entrepreneurs, the ecosystem, as well as the communities where we live and work. What this translates to creating, launching, and helping each other as entrepreneurs and launching businesses, stories, which I will not cheer you up with now, but basically of business from our events, where people meet at the events and they start new companies, they start new startups, exciting thing. Today is an example, as we are with Luis Novella and Miriam Sater at Tech Florida Advocates, are really phenomenal people who are very versed in the blockchain space. And Luis, so much for all the work he's done to pull the panelists together and curate them. Not be disappointed, you will be very excited. Before we go on to thanking our sponsor, that we very much, our hearts go out to in the UK, as a very wonderful queen has transitioned. We are also honored that she acknowledged Tech London Advocates and the system built, and knows what it is. So that's very exciting. So our Queen Elizabeth. Okay, thank you to our sponsors today are Tech Bay Area Advocates, Tech Florida Advocates, a lot of advocates, and Sonoma Clean Power is a public provider for 2 large counties, offering electricity generated by more renewable and carbon-free energy sources. Agency, it continues a lot of work in mitigating the climate crisis, supporting local community energy products, and so forth. It is the only advanced energy center in the United States, broadcasting from in California. And so many thanks for the use of this space and for our Tech to Net Zero campaign globally. We will be doing more, so thank you. Also want to talk what an amazing event we have coming up. I'm not going to bore you with anything more from over to Luis, who is very well regarded in the space and overall. This opportunity again to thank you, Luis, for all your hard work. So thank you, Lannie. Thank you.
It's a pleasure to be here. Yeah, first of all, good morning, good night, and good in-betweens to everyone. We have people joining from all over the world, and so it's wonderful to have that in this global tech world. I really am very happy to introduce 4 wonderful people in the space of blockchain that I have had the honor to work with for many years, and I'm just delighted to make an introduction. I'll try to keep it very, very short. We are a little bit focused today on the financial side of blockchain. So the 4 people that are going to be participating, besides myself, are going to be Nikola Tchouparov, who's a serial entrepreneur, and he has several blockchain and crypto projects under his belt. He actually launched the first stablecoin compliant stablecoin in the UK with synthetic CDBC and a DeFi debit card. And he was also co-founder at Moneyfold and Oracleize. And these are very, very important players in the ecosystem. So thank you, Nikola. He's going to start by talking about stablecoins and the first topic of discussion. Then we have Anish Mohammed, who's going to present the second topic around cybersecurity in the blockchain world. So maybe a little bit of a parallel of what it was like when the internet began to exist, and then what it's like now with blockchain and where we are. And he's the founder and CTO, as well as chief scientist of Panther Protocol. He has more than 20 years of experience in cryptography and security. He has been an advisor to several protocols like Ocean and Ripple. And he was involved in the early days, some of the early working groups around Ethereum, and also he's currently working on the Boston protocol. So thanks, Anish, as well. So Nikola is going to present the first topic, Anish is going to present the second one, stablecoins, and then cybersecurity in the blockchain world. And then we have two wonderful panel members. Mark Henley is the Managing Director of Blockchain Innovation for Cogent Bank. It's a US FDIC bank that wants to be the white glove service for all things crypto. And his aim is to partner and to serve infrastructure builders, crypto natives, exchanges, miners, protocols, etc. So he's very plugged into this world. One of his most important pieces of work was enabling digital cash through blockchain technologies in Haiti since 2015, and that's a wonderful project to be able to put your name against. So thanks, Mark. And then we have Mauricio Vélez, who's the founder and the CEO of 2PI Network, and this is a new up-and-coming revolutionary way to do DeFi infrastructure for fintechs. And there are many, many things coming up, but he's been in the blockchain world since 2014. And he has a background, a lot of work in Europe with Deutsche Telekom, and has been involved in this world from the beginning. So those are the four wonderful panelists that are joining us. I would like to maybe just begin by welcoming Nikola Tchouparov to make a bit of a statement around stablecoins, and then we will have an open discussion with our wonderful panelists. Out to you, Nikola. Thanks for being here.
Well, thank you, Luis, for that wonderful introduction. And I'm just waiting for my slides to come up. Alex, if you could switch on my slides. I have prepared a little presentation. There it is. Because stablecoins is quite a big topic. So I've tried to define some of the concepts and try to narrow down and focus on what I think is most important. One issue is that stablecoin is a very generic term. It's very loose definition. There's no precise definition or law or in tech. So when people talk about stablecoins, quite often they're talking about several different things. The way I like to define it, and I've underlined it here on this slide, is that stablecoins usually refers to a crypto coin or a crypto token that's built on a public permissionless blockchain. And this token has a fixed value vis-a-vis an external reference asset. So a lot of big words there. So let's start with what's a public permissionless blockchain. Well, things like Bitcoin and Ethereum are examples of such public permissionless blockchains. And obviously on Ethereum, you have the Ether crypto token, which has its own value. But then on top of the Ethereum network, there are various stablecoin protocols that try to have a fixed value against an external reference asset. And that external reference asset can be many things. It can be money, it can be gold, it can be securities, it can be a variety of things, which is why we have quite a diverse field of stablecoins. But the general idea is that you have 1,000 units of a stablecoin, and that's $1,000 today, $1,000 tomorrow, $1,000 in the future. So the exchange rate is effectively stable, and hence the name stablecoin. So that's the general idea, is that 1,000 coins on a blockchain are $1,000. Today, tomorrow, and ever beyond. Now, whether every stablecoin achieves that and are able to maintain a peg, that's a question we'll go into. But this gives you the general idea. As a point of interest, many regulatory bodies like IOSCO, FSB, and others, they have been studying this field with interest, and they use the expression purported stablecoins, because indeed many of the stablecoins in existence have not been able to maintain the pegs very effectively. And even some of the best ones, they deviate ever so slightly. And some of them are, outright fraud, where they claim to be a stable coin, but there is no mechanism to achieve that. So hence, sometimes in the media you will see, and in official reports, you will see the term purported stable coins. Now, I think I group stable coins into several sort of big categories. The first one being algorithmic, where you have a bot, a computer program, doing various activities like issuing new coins or redeeming coins or buying and selling, intervening on the open market in order to try and defend the fixed exchange rate, to defend the peg. Then the second variety is fiat-backed. And I have a slide just to confirm what fiat is for everybody in the audience, because we may have people who are not familiar. And this is typically backed by money on deposit at a bank or sometimes even banknotes. The third kind is asset-backed, and that asset could be a variety of things, and we'll go into some details. And then you also have various hybrid arrangements where there is for example, an asset provided as collateral, but there's also some open market operations to try to, try to reach a certain conversion rate. So first, to focus briefly on the algorithmic variety, it's basically a computer program which is usually deployed as a smart contract on a blockchain, and it's transparent. Anybody can go and see what exactly it does. But it attempts to manage the supply and the demand in order to maintain a fixed price. And sometimes this is successful, sometimes less so. And few of these things live longer than several months. There has been academic research in this area since 2014, 2015. There have been large projects which have reached hundreds of millions of dollars of invested assets. But from my experience, these things ultimately are not able to reach wide enough acceptance, and quite often there's issues with economics or legal issues. So from my experience, the algorithmic stable coins, whilst they're fascinating from a technology perspective and from just thinking about them, they never really succeed. So next I'll talk about the fiat-backed variety, and just as a point of interest, national currencies, so dollars, euros, British pounds, Japanese yen, etc. We call these fiat money because of the way they're issued, because they're not backed by real assets, and hence the expression fiat backed. So if you hear about people talking about fiat or fiat backed coins, it means they're backed by national currency, backed by dollars or euros, sometimes by a basket of currencies. So the first slide on the fiat backed, there are stable coins where there's literally stacks and stacks of banknotes sitting in a vault. And, for every $1,000 of banknotes, the project would issue 1,000 coins and distribute to whoever owns the $1,000. And this has worked. I don't know if anybody's still doing it. Most projects these days, on the next slide, have moved on to coins backed by deposit at a bank. And these have actually proven quite successful. So if you hear about USDC and USDT, these are two fiat-backed stablecoins that have been very successful. USDT has been around since 2014. Amount of coins issued is in the range of maybe $60 billion for USDT and 50 billion for USDC. Don't quote me on this as it changes, but it's a substantial amount. And it means there's that much money sitting on account at a bank, and some of it may be invested in commercial paper and treasuries and other assets. But for all of the units of the stable coin are in theory redeemable for that money in the bank account. And there are many proposals about how to regulate these things, because it's not quite clear how they fit within regulations. But by far, these have been the most successful type of stable coins. And then if we move on to the asset-backed stable coins, we've seen examples of gold-backed stable coins, where one coin represents 1 ounce of gold or 1 gram of gold, or a different measurement unit, 1 bar of gold. And so in theory, the price of the token should mimic the price of the underlying asset. We've seen people trying to do diamond-backed coins. We've seen coins backed by shares listed on a stock exchange. So we've seen a variety. I've listed here one kind of sardines. So there was actually an interesting project out of Luxembourg where they produce a limited number of collectible sardine cans, and they actually issued tokens where one token is redeemable for one can of sardines. And there's even attempts to develop a secondary market for these things. So there's a lot of experimentation, but these things do exist, but not quite as widespread as fiat backed. And the reason is quite often there are legal and logistical challenges to establish a link between the asset backing the coin and the actual coin on the blockchain. Part of it is the legal framework is underdeveloped, so lawyers have been quite creative, trying to fit into existing structures. There have also been issues with audits. Well, you have this gold-backed stablecoin, and you're telling me there is 1 ton of gold sitting in a vault. How often is that audited? Is it once a year? And what measurements are you taking? And we've also seen cases where, because of differences in jurisdictions or complicated structures, it's quite difficult to enforce your rights or to redeem the underlying asset. So a number of issues generally with asset-backed stablecoins. But there has been one particular type that has been very successful, and this is where the underlying asset is a pure digital asset, like Bitcoin, like Ethereum, and the token is over-collateralized. In other words, you lock up $1,300 worth of crypto, and the protocol issues 1,000 units of the coin. And so effectively you have $1,000 backed by over-collateralized by crypto, and that crypto is redeemable. And this has worked. It has been quite successful. And here I have listed MakerDAO and the DAI and Side tokens as an example of this, if you want to experiment. And then there is another asset-backed asset, which is Variety, which is very similar, but has caused some real issues. And this is again a stable coin where the collateral is crypto coins, but it's under collateralized. And this, unfortunately, these things fail and people have lost a lot of money. And you may have heard about UST and Terra and Luna, and this year that seemed to precipitate the crash in crypto markets. And my hypothesis is that there's no way to make this kind of arrangement work. So I've got a couple of points of interest just to define language. If you hear about tokenization, it's a modern word that gets thrown around. Tokenization just means creating a token version of something or tokenizing an asset. So stable coins, creating stable coins is one type of tokenization. And this is not a legal term. It's in industry how we refer to the process of linking an asset to a token on a blockchain. And another point of interest is if you hear about wrapped and bridged assets on the surface, these look very much like stable coins, like coins that are one-to-one backed by crypto assets, where one wrapped Bitcoin is the equivalent of one Bitcoin. But with these type of wrapped or bridged coins, we don't classify these as stable coins, even though they look like they are. We talk to them about as being wrapped or bridged. So this is a separate specialist topic. I just want to introduce here so you don't get confused. If you see wrapped Bitcoin, yeah, it looks like a stable coin, but we normally don't classify it as a stable coin. And so my hypothesis, I think, hopefully has become clear, is that there are a variety of stablecoin arrangements out there, and the two that, in my view, have been most successful and will be with us in the future are the two types. One is the fiat-backed, full reserve fiat-backed stablecoins, like the USDC and USDT. And for these to continue to exist and grow, I think we will see more compliance initiatives and new regulations being introduced, because I mean the issuers are trying to fit them within the existing frameworks, but there are some, the frameworks were developed say 20, 30 years ago, so some modernization is required. But I think this type of stablecoins will be with us for a long time. And the second type is the over-collateralized crypto-backed stablecoins, such as DAI, which I think these type of coins will continue to exist because there is a market demand and they are quite useful. And they work both from an economic and technological perspective, and also they're currently outside of the regulatory perimeter, which makes institutions uneasy, but it makes individuals, peer-to-peer users, it makes it much easier for them because they don't have to worry about compliance with banking secrecy laws and these kind of things. And so yeah, my view is that other types of stablecoins will not be successful going forward, and I would be keen to hear what our other panelists have to say about this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Nikola. I hope that everybody in the audience, from the beginners to other people, enjoyed that explanation, and thank you. So just to refresh people around the call on the panel, I don't know if you want to bring up the other participants, but we have Anish Mohammed, we have Mark Hindley, Mari Velas, and here's Anish. Mark, welcome, and also Mauricio. And basically, I mean, let's start with maybe Mark from Cogent Bank, right? So as a bank, just thinking stable coins could be one of the first instruments that you're going to be allowed to present to your customers. I mean, do you agree that those are the two probable survivors of the stablecoin farm, or do you feel that there's only one? Or what's your position, Mark, just to start?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think Nikola covered a lot of ground there. And I think, I think there's really a couple things around stable coins that I think will really determine its long-term, utility and use case. For folks like me who still live in the banking world, we're still waiting for regulatory clarity around stable coins and how banks can fully interact. So you've got these third-party, independent, unregulated entities like Tether, like Circle, who are minting coins and being used across the globe. You've got local regulators looking to put rules in place around attestation or auditing around how they're actually being backed, whether that's in dollars or in treasuries. We have the Federal Reserve, who put out Project Hamilton earlier this year, talking about a CBDC, which is a digital version of the dollar. You have to imagine that if that gets traction, other stable coins would certainly incur quite a bit of headwinds. So for us, I think what needs to happen is there needs to be an understanding of price of coins and value of coins. All the major coins right now are typically back to the US dollar. And as Nikola mentioned, they're held by either USD in an account or by US Treasury debt, which means that their price is fixed to $1, but their value is actually going to be fluctuating with the M1 and M2 money supply. Or in other words, how much the Fed and the US Treasury want to pump or contract the overall money supply. If every time $1 is printed using the fractional reserve banking system, that turns into $10, then every stable coin that's minted, in theory, can turn into $10. So there's no inflationary or deflationary advantage to stable coins because it's subject to the same fiscal and monetary pressures that the US dollar is. So I think until we get better clarity around the regulatory environment for how we can interact within the financial system, and until we get better clarity around will there be a CBDC or will there be greater clarity on what's backing the coins, I think its future is a little bit murky right now in terms of large scale adoption, especially in the TradFi world.
Yeah, I understand that. It's a good way. Anish, I'm curious about your position because you're quite chief scientist, so you're always thinking about what's coming up. I mean, is there a type that already is brewing in some lab and near some desert that someone's creating that we haven't thought about? Do you also agree with Nikola that these are the two viable ones, or?
Yeah, I mean, I probably should in my usual sense, agree to disagree, and I add a couple of caveats to it. I mean, there was always the mention of CBDCs. When I talk about CBDCs, any CBDC doesn't have privacy would be an interesting one. It's my view. Like you'd be like a wallet that when you walk through the street, everybody knows your whole financial history, everything you have bought from the day you were kind of born, kind of thing. That's one part of it. The other part of the thing that I generally find interesting is the fact that most stable currencies don't charge anything. So when you actually have stability, there's a risk both sides. So you have to hedge against the risk, and there's a cost for running that. So generally speaking, nobody seems to actually pay for the charges for the insurance or the hedges on both sides. So it's a magical thinking in lots of ways, and goes back to what the previous speaker was kind of saying, like some of the stable currency producers actually mint their arbitrary tokens to cover up for the gap. So imagine you have a cryptocurrency of some kind, say ETH. Look at the volatility, 30-40% volatility. If you have a stable currency attached to it, with that as a asset backing it, you need to have enormous amount of ability to hedge the bets, right? And somebody needs to pay for the risk that's being covered, right? And as it stands right now, if you think about the return on investment for staking, it's like 3-4%. There's a gap between these two. This is a significant gap. And to me, this is a worrying trend because what we are kind of seeing is a lot of the stable currencies have, bigger unauditable gaps in their, custodial mechanisms. So I'm kind of concerned about what Mark was kind of saying, clarity around how these are done, how the mechanics is really done, and how exactly who has the ability to do what, and the cost, how it's being covered. And obviously, as I was saying, there's this concern about privacy.
Yeah, and this is a perfect prompt for Mauricio's view, because basically he is working on the returns of these coins and the insurance behind it and all this stuff. Mauri, what's your take?
Yeah, I'm going to be a little bit quick. I think I sort of like agree with what Nikola mentions in these two types, but it's still a little bit too early to mention which ones are going to be in the next 10 or 20 years. I mean, this space is pretty early. I mean, of course, algorithmic type of stable coins have sort of like failed, but we don't know what is going to happen in the next 10 years. I think part of the market is going to move towards more type of regulated type of stable coins like USDC or USDT in the future. But I think if you look at what's going on the DeFi space itself, is moving towards the other side in type of stable coins development, and new ones are coming in. So which are more like decentralized type of stable coins. Regulated markets will probably go towards one end, and innovators on the DeFi space will probably start like implementing new solutions that we really don't know what it's going to be in the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah. So we almost need either the super safe, regulated, almost traditional financial product that has a blockchain element to it, or might as well go with the really progressive, high technological value projects that actually are creating and innovating products. And somewhere in the middle, there's like this gray area that's not really going to work because it's neither at the cutting edge nor regulated. It's just something to think about, but yeah, interesting. It was great. I mean, I love the comments, and maybe I think one thing that we do agree with is that this sort of currency is here to stay, right? I mean, we all agree with that. Whatever the form, if it's a stable coin, CDBC, it doesn't matter what it is, how it's backed, the mechanics will be there, And Anish, I agree that maybe the cost cannot be zero. There's a cost to this volatility for sure. But that actually means that it's going to be omnipresent. And omnipresent means that we need to be, completely airtight, secure. Cybersecurity and blockchain are two things that people don't tend to talk about. There's this, it's on the blockchain, so it's safe. Yeah, but you need to cross between that world and other worlds. And there is actually a huge amount of vulnerability. And I think the maturity of this, let's call it cybersecurity for blockchain architectures is really nascent. So Anish, you're in this world already because that's where you live. You've seen it through the internet adoption and how it, it's still not mature. It's still in the infancy of being safe in the internet world, right? The cybersecurity. So where are we in the blockchain world? Maybe just.
I shall try to keep it short and sweet. No, I don't have slides. I literally wrote up some notes. Yeah, I literally just wrote up some notes, and I will try to keep it short. So, thank you again. So the thing I wanted to describe was, we have a bunch of learnings that we've actually had from the cybersecurity world. We've gone through this whole process. We learned a lot of things. One of the things that we are noticing in the blockchain world is a lot of these learnings are missed. And this was the best way to describe this was a recent talk given by Yehuda Lintel. The talk's title was Principles of Conservative Cryptographic Design in a Stanford Blockchain Conference. So he kind of described this as like, to paraphrase him, scientific achievements of today are implemented tomorrow. That's the pace at which blockchain is progressing. So literally what happens is, like, typically, if you were to look at a cryptographic implementation, say, look at the case of AES. AES is standard. There's a long process. This puts out a proposal, a bunch of people put in the candidates, multiple rounds of candidature, all of them being reviewed, finals are produced, gets accepted, voting and other things happen. Again, evaluation happens, and one is chosen, or one or two are chosen. It takes a while, a long while. There's a lot of academic rigor or research rigor that goes into it. But in blockchain, what literally happens is, like, somebody publishes a paper, and then, in a very short period in time, something is produced. Now, one of the challenges in actually designing something is, okay, do you know how much of security margin do you need to have for a protocol? So, take the case of Yearn. Yearn was just produced by the author, so he and his family and the people around him could actually manage their funds. But it became a massive success. The result of being a massive success is the fact that, most of the security constraints that you thought were there, which normally works for a small amount of money, won't be valid for a larger amount of money. So your security model is completely blown. So this is a consistent problem across the whole of the blockchain. And then there are a couple of other smaller problems. The smaller problem is, more for the more esoteric kind, when you actually have like new things coming. So, there's two classes of people that are there. One is a class of people who are publishers and academics, and the other are the practitioners. And when practitioners see anything, what they think is, okay, if something is published, they assume that to be validated. Okay? And the other part that happens is, like, because of the fact that something is published, it doesn't mean the practitioners fully understand the implications of actually having the nuances that academics normally have. Okay, and the other thing is, like, academics totally underestimate the implications of. I'm sorry, there's somebody here. Academics normally underestimate the implications of small errors that creep into their papers. And the other things I wanted to mention was, there's been some change in the blockchain space. Some of the trends that we actually saw in cybersecurity, like formula verification, has now become more and more mainstream. There's always this problem of finding enough of people to do security audits, because it's a very small set of people who actually have the skill to do the audits, and that number being small and the very large number of smart contracts being out there makes it very difficult to find very good people to do the audits. Then the third thing that I want to mention is, like, traditionally in the traditional Web2 world, we have this ability to get insurance. I mean, we have cyber insurance. The Web3 world, we haven't yet got to a stage that there's enough of an insurance funds in there to cover all the value that's actually being covered by all the smart contracts. And to kind of give you some indication, so there have been a series of attacks on bridges, and when these attacks on bridges happen, what has literally happened is there was a massive loss. There was no real insurance provided to all the funds that were there. There are some instances, some of the backers actually put some money down and back the users of the protocol to cover their loss. For example, Wormhole, Gem Capital coming in and putting in 300 million. In general, what I want to say is like, even though formal verification has been coming in and there's been improvements in smart contract security audits coming in, there is a huge learning curve, and we are very early in the phase of evolution of security in the blockchain space. And one thing that's an elephant in the room that I should probably mention is the quantum computing challenge. The moment we have quantum computers, the basis of most of the cryptographic assumptions in the blockchain world is an elliptic curve discrete law problem. And that would be an easy problem to solve. And most of the protocol, including Bitcoin and Ethereum, will all be low-hanging fruits. So I think I kind of gave you a flavor, and I shall keep my mouth shut for other people to respond.
Thank you, Anish. Thank you for that. So the only thing I'll say is, like, should I be worried or not worried? I mean, what's your perspective? Because cybersecurity is such a
you should always be worried. It's a balancing of worrying. Yes.
Okay, great. So let's bring the panel in to give some comments. Maybe the start we can start with Maudi, just to change her around. I was curious about the insurance portion, because Maudi, I mean, this is quite close to you. I mean, you are providing fintechs, first of all, not banks, these services, and then the insurance element is a big element. And yes, when volumes are low, it's one equation. If we become mainstream, when will the new players or the old players come and securitize this?
Yeah, I think beyond insurance, I think the whole space is there's a lot of hacks going on, which of course you don't realize unless you're really deep into the industry. But it also tells you how early we are into this space. There's a lot of ways that are growing in the system to mitigate risk in terms of hacks and so on. So insurance is one, but you also have monitoring tools that are coming into the space. Besides an auditings, you have bounty programs, for example, that are running pretty well. So there are many, the space is creating themselves different ways that you can work with to mitigate the risk. At the end of the day, risk is always there. The issue is how you mitigate this risk. And insurance is a space in the crypto space that is really new, and there's still no single outsider player coming into the space. But I think we're all like waiting for that to happen. There are some players, but it's still quite new, actually.
Okay. So you are not worried. You're actually working on it, and you feel that there are enough tools coming around. Help is coming, at least for the size of business that we have to manage today.
I mean, of course you're worried, but the issue here is worry that helps you to mitigate the risk, and definitely you need to work 24/7 in this space. But the risk is always there. Yeah.
Yeah, Mark, before I go to your opinion, I was having a conversation with the CISO this morning, and we're talking about nuclear energy and some of the plants and the for risk, right? Which is zero. Basically, the internet connection is not there. Sorry, you got to do sign language or whatever. So yeah, the risk tolerance, right? There's always risk. So from a banking perspective, right? And the cybersecurity elements, I mean, what's your position, Mark? What do you think about that?
Yeah, so this is always kind of the most unpopular view coming from the stodgy old school banker, which is, if you really think about why we haven't seen really institutional adoption, large scale institutional players getting active in the Web3 DeFi space. By far the biggest reason is the lack of security, compliance, regulatory controls that are in place, whether it's insurance, whether it's KYC, BSA, OFAC, AML, whether it's the fact, when people learn that of the 21 million Bitcoins that will ever be produced, 4 million of those are essentially lost, literally lost. And there's no way to ever get that back. They're nervous. And so I think on the security front, people read about wormhole attacks or bridge attacks. They have no idea what that means. And so I think, going back to my earlier point, we need to develop regulatory clarity around how institutions can engage safely within these protocols. which I know is antithesis to what, a lot of the DeFi folks really believe in. And we're sensitive to that. I just don't see huge institutional inflows occurring until those putting assets at stake understand the vulnerabilities of what could happen. And I think that's still an open question because, and you guys know the tech is always going to be ahead of the regulations. The tech's always going to be ahead of the safeguards. And so, the U.S. stock market's been around for 240 years. There's a certain level of confidence in that. And so I think DeFi just needs to mature. And I think, and I think Mauricio hit on this. I think you might even see a bifurcation in the DeFi space where you have sort of half the folks going to a more regulated space where pool delegates or smart contracts are controlled by institutions. And then you have truly fully decentralized protocols with essentially, the gloves are off. And people at that point can probably pick their poison.
Yeah. Mark, I was thinking of the role of the bank, and one of the issues with cybersecurity in the internet world versus the blockchain world is actually the actual asset is at stake. And when we're thinking about the Wild West, when the bank had to have the gold there and some gunmen protecting it, in banking, money became imaginary, and therefore you're not actually safeguarding an asset that you cannot recover. We're back to that in a weird way. It's a loop of the cycle. Actually, if someone takes that gold, it's gone. You can buy more, but you can't really replace it synthetically, right? So it is a different challenge. The risk profile is higher just because of that.
Luis, let me give you just a quick anecdote to your point about, I saw a girl the other day in bell bottoms. It takes every 40, 50 years for things to come back into fashion. I had a guy the other day ask me, hey, Mark, does your bank still have safety deposit boxes so I can put my private keys in the bank deposit box? Well, we're not building banks and we're not building safe deposit boxes anymore. So I think this circular nature of how technology will continue to sort of gravitate towards what is known, which is why I'm so bullish on the TradFi DeFi merge. Sorry, Ethereum. But I think the real merge at scale beyond Ethereum is how can TradFi and DeFi work together? Which again, Mauricio, I know it's antithetical, but I do think that the infrastructure that exists can be leveraged for mutual benefit for both worlds.
Yeah, Nikola, any comments on Anish's position?
Yeah, I mean some excellent comments both from Anish and from the other panelists. So I think what a lot of what Anish was describing, where scientific rigor meets entrepreneurship, where it's fake it till you make it and move fast and break. I think these are symptoms of the times, I think, and symptoms of the amount of money entering this space, and symptoms of just the amount of money being printed globally over the last few years. So it's inevitable, and it's a bit bizarre. Going on Mark's point about the bifurcation, I mean, I think it ties up with what I was saying earlier, is that, well, you're going to have the regulated stable coins, the vision of DeFi where it meets traditional finance, and then you're going to have the purely crypto collateralized Wild West, which especially the young generation really likes, and there's opportunities in both spaces. And I mean, I entered this space in 2015. I spent 10 years in global markets IT, going into large banks and managing change management for their trading platforms. And we used to talk about technology being bank grade, and now we're talking about technology being blockchain grade, which to me it's even better than bank grade. But there's a gap between how operations and skills, and to get it to where the whole institution is blockchain grade. And until then, there will be hacked bridges, there will be lost billions, there will be. And to give you an anecdote, it was in the news today in the UK that a man became the second richest person in the country because the bank accidentally gave him 45 billion pounds. Now, they caught it quite quickly and reversed it, but the point is that money as imaginary, it's only as good as the record-keeping system of the bank. And my view is those record-keeping systems are old and clunky and don't work. Whereas blockchain is this fantastic new record-keeping system, and just on a tangent, to go back to something the Economist magazine said when they were first writing about Bitcoin, 6-7 years ago. They said trust is a well-kept record. So if you have well-kept records, people trust you. But if you don't have well-kept records, if your record says that this random person owns 45 billion pounds, then people lose that trust and seek alternatives. And blockchain is striving to be this alternative with various degrees of success. And I absolutely agree with Mark. I think we should try and merge the two in some fashion.
Yeah, it's I think the zero trust is very close of a concept for Anish. Actually, it's almost his identity. Anish, we have for the panel, everyone, we have a question from the audience. We have a few minutes we can answer. It is from Reggie Dunlop. So I'll read it out, and Anish, you can give us the initial thought. It seems like the US authorities are nowhere near getting a regulatory bill passed. How will that affect innovation and adoptance? Will fintechs that offer private blockchain products have an edge? Because you're very close to this risk, because of the latest events in our world. What do you feel about the US and its position towards innovation?
Yeah, so I think Mark was kind of describing, and both Mark and Nikola literally mentioned, I think even Mauricio mentioned it as well. It's like technology happens and then regulation is a catch-up. And sometimes regulation intends to do the right thing, but might end up having the opposite result. So my concern in this instance is, I'm no lawyer. I have no ability to give any, legal views. But as an observer of technology who has been actually there for like 20 odd years, I've worked on a whole bunch of things at the leading edge, wrote a lot of the standards. What I generally see is when things evolve, when they come into surface, the way we see it will be very different after like 5-10 years. So if you think about cloud and think about cloud and banking in 2009, when the first talk I gave, I described most of the things we see as banks are going to the cloud, everybody laughed at me. Right now, show me a UK bank that doesn't have a cloud service, right? So the regulation changed. At that point in time, no banking regulator would accept a bank to go on the cloud. So similarly, what has actually happened here is the regulator has taken a view on privacy. Regulator has taken a view on use of certain protocols by certain entities, and decided, as a balanced risk, prevent such things from happening. From a technology perspective, absolutely is not a good thing to happen. The so-called set of all people who are working in zero-knowledge proof systems and privacy protocols are getting bigger trouble. So that's what I would say. Hopefully things will improve. At this moment in time, if you are working on zero-knowledge proofs and if you're working on privacy in blockchain, you definitely should get some help from lawyers.
Sorry, Maudi, you're also a global platform that is sort of land agnostic. So what's your view about that US innovation? Would you be refrained from dabbing into the US, or would you actually consider it more strongly than going elsewhere because of its position towards innovation?
Yeah, I think on the DeFi space, this integration between the two worlds, like Mark mentioned before, there are already tools there for particular things that usually US is more concerned about, like KYC, doing KYC or KYB or doing AML, for example. This is already happening and can be done on chain even. So these tools are basically allowing to interact between the two worlds in a seamless way. I think what happened with Tornado Cash, which is what Anish mentioned, I think before, in a sense, is what it's keeping developers are a little bit worried with what regulation is coming and so on. But still, I mean, the space, that's only going to push to become more decentralized and more anonymous at the other edge of the space for innovation, like we've been talking before. So I don't think that is going to stop it. I just, from what I'm seeing inside, is that is definitely going to push to even more innovation to happen in that particular way that the regulations are coming probably against with. So I'm a little bit doubted that the regulations that are trying to impose will stop it. I think it will create probably the opposite.
Yeah, maybe opportunities for other places to take the place that the US will want to have thanks to this. So we are running out of time. Anything any of you feel you want to comment on briefly? 30 seconds on any of the topics. Anything you think about?
I'd like to say it's a dynamic space. It's fast moving and keeps evolving. And I mean, at the moment we're in a bear market, but if you want to learn more, if you want to get involved, don't let that deter you. There are opportunities, there are things to be built. We're still very early, so it's good to be having this conversation now, and we'll keep having it for many years to come.
Yeah, I agree. It's early. It's a good thing. Mauricio always says that, and we're all eager to see the value created out of the market for sure. Thanks. Well, I wanted to again thank you, Nikola. Thank you, Anish. Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Mauricio, for being here. It's lovely. I wish we could do this in person. I wanted to thank Lannie and the Tech Bay Area advocates for organizing this. They've done a great job doing it. And also thank the Tech Florida advocates team and Global Tech Advocates. But just mostly thank you in the panel and speakers for what you've done. Just quick housekeeping. I think Lannie is off the grid because there are so many power outages in California that wherever she was is now dark. So she's with a torch looking for her keys or something. But we have ideally a hybrid event again on blockchain that we'll announce on November 17th, similar time. And we hope to see you all around there if this is a topic of interest. We also have the Global Summit for the Global Tech Advocates in India in early November. I'm looking forward to being there and meeting with many people from across the world in innovation. And finally, the Bay Area will have their forum at some point in April, probably of last year. But with that, I think we're on the hour. We actually have 5 minutes. But I believe that we can give everybody that time back. It's wonderful to see you guys. I hope to do more work with you soon. And thanks to everyone that joined in the audience. Reach out to any of us. Hopefully you have our contact information, but we are all open to conversations. And yeah.
Thank you.